First, I would like to thank you for your attendance to today's symposium presentations. My name is Nohely Velasquez, and I'm under the mentorship of Dr. Pamela Bettis, faculty in the Department of Teaching and Learning. And the title of my proposal is The Effects of Socioeconomic Status, or SES, and Family Structure on Parental Advice Towards Post-Secondary Education. First, to give you all the scope of how I came about my research interests and project, I'll give you some background on my family and educational upbringing. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings to working class parents. They're migrant workers for the most part, and can be characterized as working class, like I mentioned before. I grew up with an educational attainment on their behalf of a high school education in Mexico on my father's behalf, and on my mother's behalf, she had an elementary school education in Mexico as well. So growing up, I was really encouraged to pursue higher education, and it was actually an expectation in my family that I'd be pursuing post-secondary education. I had the opportunity to be fortunate enough to have resources such as attending different camps every summer, and there was always something educational that was pushed on myself and my siblings on my parents' behalf. So growing up, I assumed and thought of myself just like another child of another middle-class family, and that everybody had the resources that I've had available to me. The sad reality, though, while interacting with colleagues and other peers, has been that, and definitely doing my research, has been that socioeconomic status definitely affects the way that people have resources and how they're brought up. Also, through the U.S. Census Bureau, I was able to get information, such as this, of demographics of Latinos and different ethnicities, and numbers broken down into different ethnicities. And we can see that Latinos are the largest minority group, therefore meaning that this is a population that's rapidly increasing. Also, through the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, we can see that Latinos comprise of 18% of students. And this may not seem like a lot when you just look at the number, but looking at statistics and seeing that Latinos are the largest growing minority group, we can see that we will have more Latino students, and therefore need to pay special attention to discrepancies in facts, such as these, that indicate students' elementary school entrance, and then go to high school graduation rates, and then so on through academia. And so in comparison, Latinos in comparison to other ethnic groups can be seen that have about half the success rate of high school graduation, which should be concern to all of us, because this is the growing minority and does not the rates of educational attainment do not match up. So to give you some background on this study and literature review, I've taken the fields of human development and critical studies in order to analyze literature and to approach this project. Primarily, I'll be looking into the SES on behalf of critical studies of Latinos, yet again because the importance of the discrepancies for them pursuing higher education. And in human development, I will look at the structure such as family cohesion, flexibility, and communication that also play an important role in this educational route for students. So first, I will give you some definitions that will be used throughout the presentation in order for us to be on the same level and understand more of this project. Socioeconomic status, or later I'll be referring to it as SES, is defined as the economic and sociological combined total measure of a person's work experience or of an individual or a family's economic and social position in relationship to others, education, occupation, and income. Family dimensions are then defined in cohesion. This is the family's and emotional bond, so all of the members bond and feeling of belonging to a group. For family flexibility, we have the amount of change that a family is willing to change in relationship to their situation in roles and rules. For family communication, this will be defined as degrees that smooths friction between partners and family members. So for my literature review, through human development, I have been able to learn that there is a spectrum of family cohesion and flexibility for each, and that there are 4 main levels in both of these. Also, I've been able to see how communication is measured and the different mannerisms used in groups. So for example, in this case, we'll be talking about how families interact with one another. For social class and education, I have heavily based my literature review on Annette Laraeu's work, and I've taken both her books, Home Advantage and Unequal Childhoods, to give me precedence of how I will approach my own research and my own findings. So Home Advantage, both are ethnographies that where Annette Laraeu goes into schools and talks to families and the educational system where the families have their students and are being educated. So for Home Advantage, Laraeu takes 2 schools, Prescott and Colton. Prescott is considered the higher SES school, and Colton is the lower SES school. And these are both predominantly white schools, and she measures the interaction of parents with their children and then parents within the educational system, and how socioeconomic status is a big impact because the different interaction levels are different based on this SES. Unequal Childhoods is then a compilation of stories differentiated by variables of class and race, and this is then an examination of child rearing based on different class and race. So here are the continuums for both cohesion and flexibility, referred here to as adaptability, of a family. And so you can, in the continuum of family cohesiveness, you have either an extreme of disengaged or an enmeshed family. And so as you go along through the continuum, you will find that a disengaged family is a group of individuals living together in the same roof, but really do not have that emotional connection and are not very interdependent. Moving along through the continuum, you will find connected families as well. And these are families that are more in tune with each other in regards to their emotional support for each other, but still value individuality and are not as dependent on each other. In an enmeshed family, the other extreme, you will find individuals in a family that are too interconnected, and this can sometimes be detrimental to them because they do not value individuality. And so if you have a family that is used to doing something, for example, going to a certain school, so attending a university such as WSU, and this has been a trend through grandparents, parents, and siblings, and then there's a child that chooses not to go there, then they'll be cast out, and that's when there are problems in the family. For the continuum of family flexibility, this is the differentiation of how families adapt to rules and roles that they have established. In a rigid family, you will find families that are not able to change their rules or roles in accordance to the situation. And so, for example, if you have a family whose father is used to being the breadwinner and the mother a homemaker, and they go through a situation where the father is unfortunately laid off and the mother then has to provide, and they happen to fall under the rigid family dimension, then it will be very hard for them to adjust and to change their rules. So for example, the mother then having to go to work and the father having to stay at home if that were the case. Continuing on to a more balanced relationship, this is where families are more flexible and they're able to change rules and roles accordingly to their situation. And so this will be, like aforementioned, with the family that whose father is a breadwinner and the mother a homemaker. They'll be able to change roles better and have less trouble in their relationships as a family in order to succeed in their current situation. On the other extreme of flexibility, we have families where rules are not clearly established, and everybody goes about doing their own thing pretty much, and there might be rules or roles, but these are still not followed through, and everybody is able to change them in accordance to their own personal benefit. So now to move on to the literature review on home advantage and unequal childhoods. I have been able to see also through the human development field different interactions of social class and just different family organization, family communication, and such. And so now I'll give you an overview of how these work together. So for social class and family organization, I have found that more structured families have more structured, that higher SES families have more structured roles. And this, through Laraeu's work, has been shown that it's due to the fact that higher SES families do not have to worry about their income, and so they're able to pay more attention to being able to move from one role to another with more ease than a lower SES family, because a lower SES family is primarily concerned with their income and making ends meet, usually. And so this is how it was described in her book, Home Advantage. Also, I found that in family organization and social class, higher SES families have more shared roles. And so Laraeu discusses that lower SES families have mothers taking care of their children's education, and in higher SES families this is also the case, but the differentiation between social class and how parents approach their children's education is that in higher SES families, fathers also try to add more of their support to the mother in supporting their child's education. And so this is not to say, through Laraeu's work, that lower SES fathers would not like to take a part in their children's education, but through Laraeu's study, it's been seen that they can't because they have to tend to their work in order to support the family. In regards to social class and family communication patterns, I've seen that working class and upper middle class families have different types of communication. Laraeu is able to describe working class families as having a more wide patterned communication system, and so the patterns are illustrated for you here. And a more wide patterned interaction in families would be where two individuals really do not talk to each other, but they will interact with the third party, and so the third party will be the one mediating information from those two that do not interact. And so Laraeu is able to discuss that in Colton schools, this was definitely the case because fathers, for example, had to be at work where the mother was taking care of the children and also dealt with the school. So in higher SES families, Laraeu has found there to be a more circular communication, and so I was able to identify the different types of communication through the human development field in her study. And so more circular communication would be the all-channel or star communication pattern, and this is where all individuals all interact with one another. And so this happens to be the case, yet again, in higher SES families. And so because Laraeu discusses that these families are more trained to be more inquisitive and talk to each other and question each other, where lower SES families would be more just willing to take advice and other people's opinions based on their insecurity of not being as educated as them. And so this happens to be the case then when there's family communication in schools. Lower SES families were found to be more timid than higher SES families. Lower SES families did not feel the confidence to go into a school and to challenge, in a way, an educator's perspective, because they saw them as professionals. And higher SES families, in comparison, were the other way around, where they were more willing to go in and play an active role, because they had that background where they were raised to be more inquisitive and they have that educational training to go in and ask more about their child's education. And so SES, as you can see, plays a huge role on how these parents are brought up and then interact with their children's educators. So for social class and family expectations for education, yet again, there were differences in those parents from different SESs. And so working class parents were more content with their children finishing high school in Laraeu's study, because they themselves had only finished either high school or were high school dropouts in the Colton school, which was a lower SES school. In comparison, in the Prescott school, this is where it was higher SES, and the parents, at least one of the parents in the study, had received a college education. And so then there was an expectation of children to go on and pursue and at least attain that same educational level, if not higher. For social class and child rearing patterns, I was able to see that there was differentiation, again, in different SESs. And in working class families, the mothers in Home Advantage felt that their role in their children's education was to get them ready for school in regards to making them breakfast, in regards to having them clean and taken and just attending school, and their job stopped on the other side of the door because of that insecurity that they were not prepared enough to take part in their child's education, so supplementing education that children did not have at their school. The differentiation between higher SES families was that they also got them ready for school and they felt that they needed to be prepared in just materialistic ways, but the difference here was that they were able to go in and feel like they had that partnership with the schools instead of just kind of leaving them at the door and leaving them to their educators' discretion of how their education should be conducted. And so then these parents were able to have more supplementation for their child's education and to take that initiative. This then leads me to the purpose and guiding questions of my proposal. The purpose is to find a correlation between socioeconomic status and family dimensions in the context of elementary education. And so this is heavily persuaded by Laraeu's work, because she did her work in elementary school education in predominantly white schools, and I'd like to find this out due to previous statistics that I showed you, how this plays a role in Latino families. And so through the literature, I've already found that there are some differentiations just in class, and so I'd like to see how in this specific ethnic group these take a role in preparing children for their education in regards to when it comes to their family. And so then my leading question is, what kind of advice had students been given from their parents based on their designation of SES and family dimensions? So future methodology will be a qualitative study, and this will be an interview-based project with questions structured enough to find out the family's SES and where they fall on family dimensions. But then it will be open-ended to see their perspectives on what they have advised their children, which is initially what I'm looking for. And then theoretical framework will be gathered from human development, and then social capital will also be used. So this participant pool for this proposed study will will be Latino parents in the Columbia Basin, Yakima Valley area. In the Columbia Basin, this is home for me, and so therefore I feel like through a snowball effect I'll be able to get into schools and present my research, and therefore get a population of similar SES backgrounds. And this is in an area that's highly dependent on agricultural work, so I feel like I'll be getting the same SES, and therefore I would need Yakima Valley participants to offset the same findings. And so hopefully I'll find different socioeconomic statuses in the Yakima Valley. So anticipated findings based on my literature review are that there will be more an understanding from teachers as to why students' thoughts are the way they are. So when it comes to the information that has been given by their parents, and hopefully also more encouragement on educators' behalf, because then they know more of the student's background instead of just generalizing information and having assumptions about these students. Another anticipated finding is why there are some Latinos pursuing higher education in comparison to those that are not. Possible implications of this study based on my review are that there will be it will help add significance to programs such as these following programs. So Upward Bound, Gear Up, Talent Search, CAMP, and even the McNair Scholars Achievement Program. And so hopefully these findings will help support why these resources are necessary and useful for these students when they are getting the information that they are from their parents. And yet again, it's based on their SES and family structures. And so these programs, as I've seen and have been able to participate in, are able to bridge the gap that parents lag in, unfortunately, due to their background. And so another possible implication would be the reassurance of which mediums of cohesion and flexibility are most successful in families. And so these are selected references from my literature review. And at this moment, I would like to thank my mentor for guiding me through this process and